They laughed when the farmer entered the courtroom. Not loudly, just enough to sting. A few whispers. A few smirks. The kind of laughter that doesn't echo, but settles deep in the chest. He stood near the wooden door, holding his cap in both hands, fingers rough and cracked from years of working the land. His clothes were clean but old, carefully washed yet impossible to hide their age. Mud still clung to the edges of his shoes, as if the fields had refused to let him go. People noticed that first. The mud. Then they decided who he was. A poor farmer. Uneducated. Out of place. The lawyers in tailored suits barely glanced at him. One of them leaned toward another and whispered something, and both smiled. The audience, well-dressed, confident, certain of how the world worked, shifted on the benches, already bored. This case felt small. Forgettable. Even the judge, when he finally entered, looked tired. Another file. Another name. Another problem to solve before lunch. The farmer was asked to step forward. His heart pounded, but he did not show it. He had learned long ago that fear feeds on weakness. Years of droughts, floods, failed crops, and quiet disappointments had taught him how to stand firm even when the ground felt unsteady. The charges were read. A land dispute. An accusation of trespassing. A claim that he had destroyed property that did not belong to him. The opposing lawyer spoke confidently, his voice smooth and sharp like polished steel. He painted the farmer as careless, ignorant, someone who did not understand laws or boundaries. Every sentence pushed the farmer smaller in the eyes of the room. When it was the farmer's turn to speak, he only said a few words. Calm. Respectful. Simple. I did not do what they say. That was all. A few people exchanged looks. As if to say, of course he'd say that. The judge sighed and opened the case file, flipping through pages without much interest. His eyes scanned dates, locations, signatures. Routine. Then he nodded to the clerk. Read the background, the judge said. The clerk adjusted his glasses and began. At first, nothing changed. The clerk read facts, where the farmer lived, how long he had worked the land, his lack of prior offenses. Ordinary details. The judge listened absent-mindedly, tapping a pen lightly against the desk. Then the clerk paused. Your Honor, he continued, there is an additional record attached. Not related to the current charge, but included as character background. The judge nodded again, still uninterested. Proceed. The clerk took a breath. Approximately 20 years ago, during the monsoon floods in the Eastern District. The pen stopped tapping. The judge's eyes lifted, just slightly. The clerk went on, reading carefully. A government vehicle transporting a law student was swept off a damaged bridge during heavy rainfall. The vehicle overturned and became partially submerged. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Floods were common. Accidents happened. The judge leaned forward now. The student, the clerk read, was unconscious and trapped inside the vehicle. Local reports indicate that bystanders did not intervene due to the strong current. The farmer stared at the floor. His grip tightened on his cap. According to witness statements, the clerk continued, one individual entered the floodwaters, broke the vehicle window, and removed the unconscious passenger. The courtroom grew quieter. That individual carried the victim several kilometers to safety and alerted authorities. The rescuer declined recognition and left before officials arrived. The judge's face went pale. The clerk swallowed and read the final line. The rescued individual survived. Records confirm that he later completed law school and entered public service. Silence. Not the awkward kind. The heavy kind. The judge's hands trembled. He slowly removed his glasses, staring at the page as if it had betrayed him. Because he knew that story. He had lived that story. Memories rushed back without permission, the freezing water, the pressure on his chest, the darkness closing in. The sound of shattering glass. Strong arms pulling him free. The feeling of being carried through rain and mud, drifting in and out of consciousness. And then waking up alive. He had asked about the man who saved him. No name was ever given. Just a description. A farmer. The judge looked up. For the first time, he truly saw the man standing before him. The rough hands. The quiet strength. The familiar calm. His breath caught. The courtroom waited, confused. Lawyers glanced at each other. The audience leaned forward, sensing something had shifted but not yet understanding what. The judge stood. Gasps echoed softly around the room. "This man," the judge said, his voice unsteady but clear, "saved my life." Every head turned toward the farmer. The farmer looked up, startled. His eyes met the judge's, and recognition flickered, not pride, not expectation, just memory. A long one. An old one. The judge stepped away from the bench. 20 years ago, he continued, I was a foolish young student who thought the world was predictable. One night, it nearly ended for me. His voice cracked. I never thanked the man who carried me out of that river. I never even learned his name. The courtroom was frozen now. No whispers. No smiles. Only listening. The judge turned fully toward the farmer. And now, he said quietly, he stands before me, mocked, underestimated, and accused, by people who have no idea who he is. Shame spread across the room like a slow shadow. The judge straightened. This court does not measure a person by their clothes, he said firmly. Or by their wealth. Or by how they speak. He looked toward the opposing lawyer. Especially not when evidence is weak and arrogance is strong. The lawyer lowered his gaze. The judge returned to the bench and took a deep breath. Based on the facts presented, he declared, the charges against this man are dismissed. The gavel came down, not in anger, but with certainty. The farmer exhaled, a breath he felt he had been holding for years. But the judge was not finished. He stood once more and addressed the room. Let this courtroom remember something today, he said. Justice is not about power. It is about truth. And sometimes, the quietest people carry the greatest weight. He turned to the farmer and bowed his head, just slightly, but enough. A gesture of respect. The farmer hesitated, then nodded back. No smile. No celebration. Just dignity. As he walked out of the courtroom, the same people who had laughed now watched him in silence. Some stood without realizing it. Others looked down, embarrassed by their earlier certainty. Outside, sunlight spilled across the courthouse steps. The farmer paused, feeling the warmth on his face. Nothing in his life had changed. His field still needed tending. His crop still depended on rain. Tomorrow would be another long day. But something unseen had shifted. Not in the law. In the hearts of those who had witnessed the truth. He placed his cap back on his head and walked toward the road leading home, back to the land that had taught him patience, humility, and strength. And behind him, in a quiet courtroom, a judge sat still for a long moment, remembering the man who once carried him through a storm, and realizing that some debts are not paid with words, but with justice.